You're listening to The Jake Asman Show on the SportsMap Radio Network.
Presented by Rocket Mortgage.
Live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Jake Asman.
Why y'all always filming everything?
That was Deshaun Watson last week. That's when Deshaun Watson, for the first time since early January, actually spoke to the media. Well, kind of. He said that to a group of reporters before a Texans training camp practice last week. Then this week, Rusty Hardin, Deshaun Watson's attorney, had a press conference and basically said nothing's changed in the last couple months, that his client hasn't done anything wrong. Meanwhile, in that same press conference, Rusty Hardin did confirm, though, that the FBI has spoken to Deshaun Watson. Now, stop me if I'm wrong, Brendan, but the FBI usually doesn't speak to you randomly. Like, they usually are just, they're looking into something if they're going to be talking to you.
You don't have casual weekend chats with the FBI?
I have not. Have you?
Yeah, I have one logged like once a month.
Oh,
It's
okay.
Totally normal.
I stand corrected then. I apologize. So you get the point here. Deshaun Watson, obviously, is not playing football ever again for the Texans. I think we all understand that. But I don't think Deshaun Watson is playing football in 2021. And I've been very outspoken about this on this show and during my local show that's on ESPN 97.5 here in Houston. I don't see any scenario where, one, a team could acquire him and trade a lot of draft capital to the Texans to get him. And then, two, say a team would be willing to do that. How is the NFL allowing this guy to play with 22 civil lawsuits filed against him? He will be placed on the commissioner's exempt list within the next 3 weeks. That has been my prediction all along. I don't see a scenario where nothing happens. The Texans say, well, NFL, can you do something? And the NFL is like, nah, we're good. We're just going to make you guys carry his spot on the roster. I mean, I've been at a lot of these Texans practices here in town. Deshaun Watson a couple days ago was like the fourth string safety. And like he was doing nothing. He goes through individual drills, which is basically pitch and catch. Then he goes back into the excuse me. Then he goes back into the training facility. Then comes back out near the end of practice. He's doing nothing. And I don't think it's fair that the Texans even have to use a roster spot on him. I think it's a joke. I think the NFL should step in and place him on the exempt list. And he'd still be getting paid. But when you have 22 lawsuits filed against you, I think that's grounds for putting someone on the commissioner's exempt list. Just like Major League Baseball essentially did the same thing with Trevor Bauer. I don't know if Deshaun's guilty. I don't know what he did. I do know that the NFL should use some common sense here and not allow Deshaun Watson to take up a roster spot for the Texans. He doesn't even want to play for them. And I don't see any team acquiring Deshaun Watson right now. I mean, legal issues aside, if we analyze the football stuff in a giant vacuum here, the Texans are not trading Watson until they get close to full value. Why trade him now? The Texans are in no rush to trade Deshaun Watson. Zero rush. They won 4 games with him last year, and he led the NFL in passing yards. Any picks they get in a Watson deal, they're not going to be able to use those picks till at least next offseason. And if you're the Texans, I think it makes sense to wait to deal Deshaun Watson, legal stuff aside, because then you know where those picks will be that you're acquiring. Plus, there'll be more teams that will be interested in trading for him in the offseason. I'll give an example. If the Giants stink this year, they have 2 first-round picks. Daniel Jones will not be their guy long-term if they flame out this year. Maybe the Giants get in the mix. If Jalen Hurts stinks in Philly, the Eagles could be in the mix. They have 2 1s. Miami, if Tua stinks, they could get in the mix. Denver, if Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater stink, and I think they both stink, they'll want Deshaun Watson. So you see the point? There'll be plenty of teams that still want the guy next offseason. And then maybe by then the NFL levies its suspension. Maybe Deshaun Watson settles all these allegations against him in civil court. And maybe by 2022, at the age of 26, he's ready to play football again. And ask yourself this, is Deshaun Watson going to play football again? I think the answer is yes. At some point, he's going to play football again. Then there'll be a market for him at some point. It does not make any sense to me why he's not yet on the commissioner's exempt list, because it's embarrassing the league when the media is filming him doing nothing at practice, which is finally why this past week the Texans probably were like, all right, let's stop the charade. He's not going to show up at practice. We'll keep him indoors. because having him just mope around at practice just looks stupid. I just have a question about the NFL if they don't do anything. What happens to his roster spot? Can the Texans IR him? Can they create a phantom injury for Deshaun Watson? I mean, it's a messy situation.
Jake, if they don't do anything with him, there's going to be calls for him to play.
I mean, if the Texans really wanted to be a hard ass about it, they could say, look, you're under contract. We're paying you a lot of money. Go out there and start week 1 against Jacksonville. It's a winnable game. Let's start 1-0, Deshaun.
I don't think they will play him. But Texans fans, could you imagine if the NFL doesn't put him on the exempt list?
I don't know why. I don't know exactly what they're waiting for. That's my whole thing with this situation. What exactly is the NFL waiting for here? And the other thing in all this is that the Houston Police Department still has an open investigation, so we don't know if there's potential criminal charges coming. Is that what the NFL is waiting for? They're going to wait to the last possible second before the regular season just to see if there's some criminal charges that come out? But here's the thing. You don't necessarily need criminal charges to use the exempt list. There's been other players in the past that have been placed on the commissioner's exempt list for allegations and civil lawsuits that ultimately weren't criminal charges. So I don't get it. I really don't. There's no team that can acquire him right now. Find me that team. Sure, if the Texans were like, well, yeah, we'll trade him to you for 1 first-round pick. Just take him off our hands. Then, yeah, I think a lot of teams would be like, okay, we'll deal with it. Because he's a great football player, as we all know. But if you're the Texans, you're Nick Caserio, your tenure here in Houston will ultimately be defined by this trade. Because this trade sets you up to potentially draft another franchise quarterback, to take those picks and trade them for even more picks, a la the Laramie Tunsil deal in Miami. Look what Chris Greer did with those 2 firsts from the Texans. He turned them into 4 extra ones. And then obviously, Nick Caserio's time in Houston will be judged by, well, if the Texans have the first pick of the draft next year, who's the quarterback they're taking? But the Watson trade's a big part of all this. I mean, what are the options here for the Texans if the NFL does nothing? They put him on IR for the whole year? Do they make up some kind of injury? Do they carry him as an inactive third quarterback the entire year? So you cut Jeff Driscoll and you have Tyrod Taylor and Davis Mills as your 2 quarterbacks and technically Deshaun Watson? You make him play? I think we all know that's unlikely. Because what if he gets hurt? Then what? Plus, I doubt Deshaun Watson would play. I think he'd come up with a fake injury to get out of it. His back hurts. He'll pull a Jalen Ramsey like what he did in Jacksonville. It is a fascinating situation, and there's nothing to compare it to. Nothing to compare this to at all. 800-224-2004. See, what's difficult with the Watson situation is this. If it was only 1 or 2 women coming out, there'd be a lot of people saying, well, you can't put them on the exempt list, innocent before proven guilty. I understand all that. But the problem is this. There's 22 lawsuits. Are we going to sit here and say all 22 of these women are lying? It's a lot harder to discredit 22 women coming forward than just 1 or 2. That's a fact. So I don't know if he is guilty or innocent. I do know the NFL has the commissioner's exempt list for a reason, for instances like this. So he can still make his money, but he doesn't want to play for the Texans anyway, so why should he take a roster spot away from the Texans? I feel like professional sports needs a common sense rule, and this is one of those examples where I think it's common sense. It's common sense for Deshaun Watson to be on the exempt list until the legal situation is clarified.
Can he request the exempt list? Would he be the first player ever to do that?
I don't think he wants the exempt list because I think in his mind, he doesn't want to make it seem like he's guilty in any way. And the exempt list would be like an indication that he's guilty of something. Even though technically it would just be, well, you're dealing with a legal situation. We don't want you to take a roster spot from the Texans, team you don't even want to play for. It's a mess. There's no right or wrong answer here because we've never had a situation like this. But I will say my personal opinion is he should not be anywhere near the Texans. He should be on the exempt list, paid leave. It's a bad look for the league that he's around the team. 800-224-2004 is the number if you want to get involved. Also on Twitter at Jake Asman, JakeAsman. Will anything happen in the next 3 weeks? I still think before week 1, he does go on the exempt list. That's my personal take. Brendan, week 1. Is Deshaun Watson on the Texans roster or is he on the commissioner's exempt list?
I think he has to be on the exempt list. I think that's what they're waiting for. The start of the regular season. Hold off as long as you possibly can, and then acknowledge you can't wait any longer.
It's like the person at school that always just waits
to
the very last second to get the homework assignment done.
Has anybody been on the exempt list in the preseason before?
I'm trying to think.
I don't think they have.
Examples of players on the exempt list include Adrian Peterson, Josh Brown, the ex-Giants kicker. It's been used before. I don't think Big Ben was ever on the exempt list. I don't know if it existed then. I'd have to get the running list of players that have been on it. The Reuben Foster was on the exempt list. He allegedly committed an act of domestic violence. There's more. But this is why you have the exempt list. Player gets paid, but he shouldn't be playing. It seems like it's common sense. At Jake Asman on Twitter, if you want to weigh in on that very topic. A lot still to talk about. I mentioned Justin Fields and Mitch Trubisky and the Chicago Bears against the Bills. Well, we're watching Justin Fields come in the third quarter right now, and he led the Bears down the field, but their drive stops around the 10-yard line. So field goal try coming for the Chicago Bears, who are losing 41-6 to the Buffalo Bills in the preseason. 41-6. And if you watched any of the first half, if you're just tuning in, Mitch Trubisky back in Chicago as the Bills backup started the game because Josh Allen did not play in this football game. And Trubisky carved up the Bears. It was like poetic justice, I'm sure, for Mitch Trubisky to go back to Chicago. I get it. The game doesn't count, but don't tell that to Mitch because he looked good. It's amazing what great play calling can do for quarterbacks. Am I right? Brian Dable working with Mitch Trubisky in one half proved he's a better caller of plays than the supposed offensive genius that is Matt Nagy. Fascinating. That division, man. I mean, can we just give it to the Packers now? Brendan, I know you're a Lions fan.
Absolutely.
And I like your coach. But the Lions, the Vikings, the Bears, they're nowhere close to the team that the Packers have.
Not a bigger lock to win the division, I don't think, in the NFL.
It has to be
Green Bay. Maybe the Chiefs, but outside of that.
Yeah, seriously. It really is unbelievable. 800-224-2004 is the number. Once again, if you want in on the phones, on Twitter, at Jake Asman. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. Did you hear what Tony Romo had to say about Jets rookie quarterback Zach Wilson? He compared Zach Wilson to one of the best quarterbacks in the history of the sport. We'll play you what Romo said about Wilson next right here on the Jake Asman Show on a Saturday on Sports Map Radio.
Pharrell.
Coast to coast! Vic Fangio, I always love when he embarrasses himself.